21 years ago, a 29-year-old housekeeping employee left the Sahara Las Vegas hotel after her night shift and vanished into the Nevada desert. No trace, no witnesses, only her abandoned car left in an empty lot. Police suspected she was kidnapped, possibly murdered, but no body was found, and there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute anyone. The investigation quickly hit a dead end. For nearly 2 decades, the case sat in cold case files, while her family patiently waited for answers that seemed would never come. Then one day, when technicians re-examined old DNA samples, they discovered a piece of evidence that had never been analyzed, and from there, everything began to change in ways no one could have anticipated. Before we dive into this haunting case, let us know where you're watching from, and if you're interested in true cold case stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. On the night of August 14, 2004, Las Vegas was as bright as ever. The lights from the Strip casting a pale yellow glow into the sky, mingling with the dry desert heat. Amid the drunken tourists and thumping music from bars, a young woman named Marianne Doyle finished her late shift at the Sahara Hotel and Casino. She had worked as a housekeeper there for nearly 4 years, quiet and meticulous, as if each folded bedsheet was a promise of order in a city that never slept. Security cameras in the employee parking lot captured her final image at 12:37 a.m., Marianne in her cream-colored uniform, wearing a small backpack, walking quickly toward her old silver Toyota Corolla. No one saw her after that. The next morning, HR called to report she didn't show up for her shift, something almost unheard of. No texts, no calls, no goodbyes. Her phone was dead, her bank account showed no new transactions, and colleagues only recalled that she seemed more tired than usual, as if carrying a secret no one could guess. When the Las Vegas sun rose over the eastern desert, her small apartment, shared with her roommate Alicia Torres, remained silent. Marianne didn't come home. The next day, 36 hours after she left the hotel, Alicia called the police, her voice trembling. She'd never disappear like this. Never. In the 911 recording, Alicia's shaky breaths mixed with the distant sound of police sirens. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department opened missing person case #041815, a cold code among the city's hundreds of missing person reports. But for those who knew Marianne, this wasn't an ordinary disappearance. She wasn't a gambler, had no debts, no shady connections. A disciplined 29-year-old woman, always punctual, vanished in the middle of Las Vegas, a city blanketed in cameras and lights. In the first hours of the investigation, officers had only one blurry video of her leaving the parking lot. No other figures, no sounds, just desert wind and neon lights reflecting off her car's windshield. All traces stopped there in a single frame, and that was the moment Las Vegas knew something was deeply wrong. The next morning, in the cold conference room of the Sahara Hotel and Casino's security department, 2 Las Vegas Metropolitan Police investigators, Lieutenant Raymond Cook and rookie officer Rachel Monroe, sat before a surveillance monitor replaying the last footage of Marianne Doyle. They watched repeatedly as she left the employee parking lot at 12:37 a.m., walking quickly, head slightly bowed, as if eager to get home. The footage cut off just as she opened her car door. Then the screen went black, switching to a cold message. Signal lost, 032 to 047. 15 minutes of missing data, unexplained. There's no reason this camera would fail at that exact moment, Rachel said, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. It's not a system glitch, someone tampered with it. Cook didn't respond, just silently noted, 15-minute blackout, probable tampering. They began the first round of interviews that day. Marianne's co-workers, housekeepers, laundry staff, doormen, all said the same. She was reserved, quiet, hard-working. That night, she seemed tired, saying she'd head home early for something in the morning. One of the last people to see her, a server named Rosa, said Marianne left the ground floor elevator with her familiar backpack, alone. At the security desk, the night guard Russell Harland stated he only saw her walk by, wave and leave. Rachel noticed Harland avoided eye contact, his voice flat, almost rehearsed. When she pressed about the cameras, he shrugged. Old system glitches sometimes. I don't know. When asked why his 12:40 patrol wasn't logged, Harlan pursed his lips. I forgot, probably checking the fence. When the night shift employee list was printed, it showed 28 people, servers, technicians, managers, and 2 guards. Only Harlan had a history of sudden job changes, leaving his last hotel job in North Vegas after just 2 months. Cook noted his name, marking it in red. The search began. LVMPD deployed patrols around the strip, checking every empty lot, gas station, and nearby residential area. Convenience stores were asked to pull internal camera footage. None showed Marianne after 12:40 a.m. Another team scoured the eastern desert, where her phone signal dropped at 12:49, just 12 minutes after the hotel cameras lost signal. Rachel visited the small apartment Marianne shared with Alicia Torres. The room was tidy. A half-drunk coffee cup, still on the dresser. The landline blinking with new messages. The voicemail held HR's voice, reporting her unauthorized absence that morning. Everything in the room was still, as if Marianne had stepped out just hours ago. That afternoon, the team checked the Sahara's employee card access system. It showed 2 entries in quick succession, 0 hours 37 minutes and 16 seconds. Employee exit, card ID hash 4429, 0 hours 42 minutes and 3 seconds. Security gate access, card ID hash 2251. The vehicle gate opened twice in 5 minutes. Patrol? Cook asked. Rachel shook her head. No log entry. They requested GPS data from the security patrol vehicle. But Harlan's unit had been removed for battery repair. On the 3rd night after Marianne's disappearance, police still hadn't found her Toyota Corolla. Missing posters with her photo in her hotel uniform were plastered along Sahara Avenue, where thousands of neon lights flickered nightly. A local reporter asked if she might have left on her own. Cook replied curtly. No, a woman disappears during a 15-minute data gap, and a gate opens twice. That's not a coincidence. When the first internal report was filed, the final line read, "No confirmed evidence of foul play. Investigation continues." But in the dim blue light of the surveillance room, Cook stared at the frozen frame. Marianne's small figure by her car door, then nothing but black. In that void, somewhere in those erased seconds, lay the answer to what happened, and he knew they'd have to trace every piece of those 15 minutes to find the truth. 4 days after Marianne Doyle was reported missing, Las Vegas kept running as if nothing had happened. The Strip's lights still glowed, slot machines clinked steadily in the Sahara's lobby. But in the makeshift basement office of the investigation team, the air was taut. Cook and Rachel barely left their desks, cold coffee cups piling up beside unread files. They'd combed through abandoned vehicle lists, checked public parking lots, pulled traffic camera data around the eastern desert. Still no trace. On the morning of August 18th, a call from Henderson PD sent the team scrambling. A gas station worker reported spotting an old silver Toyota in a vacant lot behind an industrial area on Nellis Boulevard. Its license plate matched Marianne Doyle's registration. The scene was on the city's edge, nearly 10 miles from the hotel, where sand mixed with industrial debris. The Corolla sat crooked on gravel, its tires lightly dusted, as if abandoned for days. The door was unlocked. Cook nudged the handle. It opened easily. No foul odor, no blood, no signs of a struggle. On the passenger seat was Marianne's purse, slightly open, containing her wallet, employee ID, lipstick, and a few receipts. Her Motorola V60 phone lay on the floorboard, battery dead. Rachel, gloved, examined the dashboard. Everything was oddly neat. If this was a kidnapping, she said softly, why leave everything behind? Cook didn't answer. He crouched, pointing to the driver's side floor, a dark green fabric scrap, like from a uniform hem, caught in the seat gap. Clark County's forensic team arrived quickly. Technicians photographed the scene, marked each point, dusted for prints on the steering wheel, gear shift, and door handle. A hair was carefully lifted from the back seat cushion, sealed in a numbered nylon bag labeled Sample Hash 12, driver's seat area. Under the car, they collected soil from the tires, noting a dry layer on the rear wheels that seemed different from the local desert sand. "Not from here," a technician said. "It's mixed with red clay, like from east of Boulder." Cook looked up, exchanging a quick glance with Rachel. All evidence was numbered, photographed, and sealed in moisture-proof containers. Rachel signed the final chain of custody form at 5:46 p.m. before the car was towed to LVMPD's storage. The scene report noted briefly, "No evidence of struggle. Victim's belongings intact. Vehicle appears deliberately abandoned." But the word deliberately lingered for both. That evening at Clark County's criminalistics lab, forensic analyst Dr. Lisa Moreno received the evidence. She'd handled hundreds of cases, but few were this tidy. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing to disrupt the order of the scene, as if the driver intentionally erased all traces before leaving. Lisa examined a hair under the microscope. The long, dark brown strand matched Marianne's medical records, but another, shorter, thicker, darker, didn't. She noted it, sending it for DNA analysis. Rachel and Cook reviewed the GPS report. Data showed the car traveled 18.4 miles since its last card swipe at the hotel lot. From Sahara Avenue to the Nellis lot was only about 10 miles straight, but the car had taken a winding route through unmonitored roads. "Someone knew this city well," Cook said grimly, "and how to avoid every surveillance point." The next morning, preliminary fingerprint results arrived. 4 prints on the gear shift and driver's door handle matched Marianne. Another, a partial thumbprint, was unclear, matching only 8 of 12 points with the security guard, Russell Harland. Not enough to charge, but enough for Cook to pause. "Half a hand in her car," he said. No reason for that if he just waved hello. At the evidence lot, as the car was sealed in storage, Rachel stared at the dust on its hood, reflecting the fluorescent lights. She recalled the footage, Marianne's bowed head, as she walked into the night, then gone. Now the car was the only witness. No blood, no violence, just absolute silence, as if the woman had been methodically erased from the world. Lisa Moreno's second report noted the tire soil contained minerals specific to the Sunrise Mountain foothills, where abandoned mines were scattered. If true, the car had been there before Nellis. If he wanted to hide something, Rachel said, that's the perfect place. Cook nodded, pulling up a satellite map. The eastern desert stretched to Lake Mead, hundreds of miles of empty land, no cameras, no lights, just wind and sand. As night fell over the city, Las Vegas's glass towers reflected their lavish glow, while below, an investigation sank deeper by the hour. No body, no witnesses, only an abandoned Toyota, a 15-minute gap, and a partial print. But Cook knew, in that silence, someone was watching, and they knew exactly how to make a person vanish in the Nevada desert, leaving nothing but dust on the tires. Over the 3 days after the Corolla was found, LVMPD's task force buried itself in tracing its movements. Rachel and the forensic team reconstructed the route from the Sahara to the abandoned lot, nearly 10 miles, but with countless turns and data gaps. They started with the last confirmed timestamp, 12:37 a.m., cameras catching Marianne entering her car. Then, traffic cameras picked up one blurry frame at 12:42 at Sahara Avenue and Maryland Parkway, headlights sweeping the lens. The car headed east, leaving the strip's neon glow. After that, nothing. No more frames, no plates read automatically, as if the car melted into the Nevada night. Rachel spread a Las Vegas map on the table. Red dots marked camera points, Sahara Avenue, Fremont Street, then nothing at Sunrise Manor. If she drove straight, she said, there's only 2 possibilities: someone was in the car, or she was forced to turn. Cook nodded, eyeing the GPS report from the car's black box. The data was incomplete, but showed an abrupt stop at 12:49 near Cell Tower Hash 23 on Boulder Highway, where Marianne's phone lost signal. Telecom specialists analyzed AT&T's logs. Her phone signal cut off after 3 failed connection attempts, a sign of the device being turned off or jammed. Rachel pointed at the screen. It didn't fade like normal. Someone shut it off or ditched it. Cook circled a 2-mile radius around Tower Hash 23, ordering a search of the nearby empty desert dirt roads, abandoned material dumps, old mines. When scouts returned, they reported the route had almost no traffic cameras, just a few streetlights and a shuttered gas station. A utility worker on a late shift nearby recalled seeing a small silver car driving oddly slow around 12:30 a.m., but couldn't describe the driver. Slow, like it was looking for a stop, he said. His statement left Rachel pensive. She reopened the car's positioning file. GPS showed odd points. After leaving Sahara Avenue, the car didn't go straight, but turned onto a side road parallel to Desert Inn Road, then looped to Charleston Boulevard, a stretch with no cameras. Someone knew the city, Cook said heavily. Not a tourist, not a newcomer. Rachel nodded. And maybe he picked that route to avoid being seen. Meanwhile, Clark County's lab sent a supplemental report. The tire soil matched the geological makeup of the Sunrise Mountain foothills, less than 3 miles from Boulder Highway. The car had been there before Nellis. Rachel circled the area on the map, her red pen digging in potential stop point. The police began reviewing all phone location data of individuals connected to Marianne, including co-workers. Russell Harlan's data briefly appeared in the same area as cell tower hash 23 between 12:45 and 12:50 a.m. When questioned, he claimed he went straight home to North Las Vegas. But his phone signal showed up in the opposite direction, along Boulder Highway. Just a coincidence, he said, during a brief interrogation. Cook didn't believe in coincidences. The tech team built a 3D simulation of the route, based on GPS data, maps, and cell signals. The model showed Marianne's car stopped for about 3 minutes at a spot over 200 meters off the main road. An empty area, no lights, no houses. 3 minutes, Rachel said, eyes fixed on the screen, enough time for someone to open a car door, say a few words, and vanish. When Rachel and Cook visited the site in person, the morning desert wind kicked up fine dust, swirling in small eddies on the hard ground. There was nothing but a few sun-faded tire tracks and a rusty old soda can. Yet the scene held a strange weight for them, a missing piece between the 15-minute gap in the footage and the car's final location. A journey cut in half, starting at Sahara Avenue, ending at Nellis Boulevard, and somewhere in between was where Marianne Doyle vanished from the world. That evening, in LVMPD's small meeting room, the blue glow of an electronic map lit up the strained faces of the investigative team. Cook concluded curtly, she didn't drive there herself. Either she was stopped, or she was lured off course. Rachel added, if she was stopped, he had to know her route. If she was lured, he was someone she trusted. The room fell silent. Only the hum of the air conditioner and the map's red line stretching from Sahara Avenue to Boulder Highway, stopping at the nameless empty lot, filled the space. A short route on the map, but a chasm in the case, where all signals stopped, all images vanished, and every theory began. In the days that followed, as the route was pieced together from fragmented data, the team shifted focus from missing person to suspected deliberate crime. Everyone who had contact with Marianne Doyle in the 2 months before her disappearance was listed for scrutiny, a roster of nearly 24 names, an ex-boyfriend, co-workers, long-term hotel guests, and 2 night shift security guards. Rachel pinned the list to the meeting room wall, each line highlighted in fluorescent marker. At the center, one name stood out, Russell Harlan. He was the only link connecting every anomaly, the 15-minute camera blackout, the gate access at 042, and the phone data at Boulder Highway, all tied to his shift. The problem was, no direct evidence implicated him. Harlan had resigned the morning of August 15th, hours after Marianne vanished. In his personnel file, he handwrote his reason, job unsuitable for health. No one questioned it then, and his resignation was approved that day. Cook stared at that line for a long time, sipped cold coffee, and said quietly, A security guard quits hours after an employee disappears. That's not health. It's panic. On August 20th, police summoned Harlan to Sahara PD for a formal statement. He arrived on time, in a white shirt, walking calmly, showing no signs of anxiety. Rachel sat across from him, placing a recorder on the table, her voice steady. "Were you the last person to see Miss Doyle leave the lot?" Harlan nodded. "Maybe," she waved, said "see you later." I just waved back and kept patrolling. "Did you leave through the employee gate at 12:42? Rachel pressed. He pursed his lips, then answered, "Yeah, I was checking the north fence. Heard a weird noise. Did you log it?" "I forgot." "Do you often forget when you hear weird noises?" That question made him stiffen briefly. When Rachel mentioned his phone data, Harlan raised an eyebrow. "I live in North Vegas. Maybe the signal drifted. Towers are spotty. You can't pin me with cell data." His voice stayed calm, slightly hoarse, his eyes barely blinking. After over an hour of questioning, he stuck to his story, just a wave, no contact, no further talk. With no clear contradictory statement or physical evidence, the team had to let him go. Rachel sat alone in the interrogation room after he left, staring at the empty chair. "No one's that calm, unless they know they'll walk," she said softly. Cook only sighed. "Problem is, the law doesn't let you arrest someone on a hunch." The team kept reviewing the remaining names. Marianne's ex-boyfriend, a sound engineer, was in Denver at the time, with a solid alibi. A co-worker, with a prior dispute, was confirmed working the morning shift after. Long-term guests were cleared, none matching the time or place. Harlan, as others were ruled out, grew more suspicious. On August 22nd, Rachel and Cook visited the boarding house, where Harlan rented a room in North Las Vegas. The small, cramped space was nearly empty. The landlord said he'd moved out a few days ago, leaving the key in the mailbox. When Rachel opened the door, the smell of cigarette smoke and machine oil hit her. A broken chair sat in the middle, the carpet marked with faint reddish dirt footprints. She crouched, collected a soil sample, and sealed it in an evidence bag. That sample would later match the soil from Marianne's tires at 97%. But for now, it was just a minor detail no one noticed. In the report to superiors, Cook wrote, "Suspect of interest Russell Harlan, no warrant." Under surveillance recommendation, the DA's office denied an arrest warrant for insufficient legal grounds. They needed more than DNA, more than a partial print. They needed a witness, a camera, or a slip-up from Harlan. That evening, Rachel sat alone before the wall-mounted map. Red strings connected Sahara Avenue to Boulder Highway, then to Nellis Boulevard, Marianne's final route. A small green dot marked where the car was found, and beside it, she wrote in red, "Harlan." She had no proof, but she had something stronger than evidence. The instinct of someone who'd looked into a liar's eyes. In the internal report, Cook added a final line, not for the file, but for himself. Bold, if Harlan is truly innocent, why did he leave town right after questioning? If he's guilty, where is he now, and where is Marianne? That question would echo through the years every time they reopened the case. Like a wound that wouldn't heal, a man calmly walking out of an interrogation room, carrying with him the secret of 15 minutes of darkness that Las Vegas had never seen. A week after Marianne's Corolla was found, Las Vegas kept moving. But for the investigative team, everything seemed to stall. No new leads, no witnesses, no physical signs pointing to the next step. Russell Harlan vanished, as if he'd never existed. His empty boarding room now just a small note in the person of interest file. Rachel sat before a surveillance monitor, replaying the only footage of Marianne leaving the lot. Each slow-motion review, she searched for something new. A shadow's reflection, a faint background noise, but there was nothing. Just a young woman, head bowed, walking quickly, cold fluorescent light on her face. Then the screen going black. After 15 minutes of lost signal, Las Vegas swallowed her in silence. The search team made a final sweep east of the city, the desert edge where Marianne's phone signal dropped at 12:49. Dozens of officers with K-9 units fanned out across Sunrise Mountain, extending to Boulder Highway. Desert winds whipped up red dust, erasing their footprints moments after they passed. Temperatures topped 110 degrees Fahrenheit, the dry air limiting searches to a few hours daily. Helicopters circled above, infrared cameras scanning rocky ridges, but the screen showed only scorched earth and faint heat signatures of lizards. No vehicle tracks, no human traces. Rachel recalled Cook's words as they left the scene. The desert has a short memory. It erases everything after a single gust. She knew he was right. In a place like this, tire tracks vanished in hours. A drop of blood blended into dust by noon. Nothing lasted long enough to be called evidence. When the team returned, the first week's final report was a mere 2 pages. No new evidence. No confirmed sightings. Subject presumed abducted. A cold note was added to the file. Possible abduction. No leads. Each word felt like a dull blade cutting into the patience of those searching. Local media, initially fervent for 2 days, shifted focus to a strip traffic accident. Marianne Doyle's disappearance was relegated to page 3, under a bland headline, 29-year-old woman missing after shift. Police still investigating. No one read to the end, where the final line stated, "No leads have been released." In LVMPD's office, the missing posters began to fade. Marianne's face on the bulletin board turned yellow. Her eyes still staring out, as if asking, "Are you still looking for me?" Rachel couldn't bring herself to take them down. She still believed they'd find her, even if just a small trace left in the desert. Cook, older and more seasoned, saw it with harsh pragmatism. "No witnesses, no cameras, no physical evidence," he said, voice weary. "Just guesses." He suggested shelving the case, moving it to the cold case division to save resources. Rachel objected but couldn't change the outcome. The case was labeled unsolved, inactive, stored in the basement archive, among hundreds of similarly tagged files. On August 24th, Cook signed the report's final page. A red stamp marked the paper, case suspended, pending new evidence. No voices, no farewells, just a file gently placed in a metal cabinet, where dim lights never reached. That night, Rachel drove along the road from Sahara Avenue to Nellis Boulevard, a path she'd memorized curve by curve. Her headlights lit up casino billboards, then faded through sparse residential areas. At a quiet stretch, she stopped, turned off the engine, and listened to the wind. It was the emptiest sound she'd ever heard. Not silence, but the sense of someone whispering far away, their words never reaching her. The next morning, her desk held only the closure memo with Cook's handwritten note. Marianne Doyle, last seen 0:37 a.m., August 15th. Sahara employee lot. Possible abduction. No leads. Nothing more. No clues, no hope. Just an absolute void, as quiet as the eastern desert, where every trace was swept away by the wind, and every answer lay still under the hot sand, waiting for someone patient enough to return. Marianne Doyle's missing person file was moved to LVMPD's basement in the fall of 2005, stored in gray metal cabinets labeled Cold Case Division. The space carried the distinct smell of old paper, sealing tape, and preservation chemicals, a mix of time and disappointment. On the file's cover, case #041,815, possible abduction, was already fading. But Marianne's photo in her Sahara Hotel uniform remained pristine in a clear plastic sleeve, her eyes staring as if still waiting for a response. All collected evidence, from hair samples, fabric scraps, fingerprints, to tire soil, was sent to Clark County's forensic lab for long-term storage. Each item was double-sealed, placed in a specialized freezer at -20 degrees Celsius, labeled Retention Indefinite. New technicians were told that if any samples were to be kept for future tech advancements, this case was among the few marked for permanent preservation. Over the years, Marianne's file sat untouched in storage, occasionally pulled for periodic reviews. In 2010, Las Vegas PD and the FBI launched the National CODIS Match Initiative, cross-referencing DNA from unsolved cases with the National Criminal Database. The unidentified hair from Marianne's car was resubmitted. Rachel, now in a different department but still checking on the case, visited the lab to sign off on the transfer. Maybe tech's good enough now to find him, she told Dr. Lisa Moreno, who processed the evidence in 2004. Lisa nodded slightly. We'll try, but don't hope too much. 4 months later, the result came back, no match found in CODIS. No hits in the National Criminal Database. Rachel read the cold printed words and stayed silent for a long time. The report was folded, returned to the file, and the case went back to its slot. Row 3, Cabinet 7, Drawer 14. In 2011, another review focused on the backgrounds of listed suspects. Russell Harland, the only name never cleared, was living in Phoenix, Arizona, working as a security guard at a small mall, with no new criminal record or suspicious behavior. Phoenix PD's report noted, normal behavior, clean record, stable residence. To Rachel, it was too clean to trust. She sent an internal memo, monitor Harland for any relocation or job changes. Do not approach, but no one cared. The case was too cold, and in a city rife with crime like Las Vegas, old files faded under the noise of daily new cases. Time passed, technology advanced. Forensic experts began discussing forensic genealogy, using DNA lineage data to trace distant relatives of suspects. But in the mid-2010s, it was a new, costly tool rarely approved for old cases. Marianne Doyle's file remained still, dust thickening on its spine. Rachel left LVMPD in 2013 for the Nevada Bureau of Investigation. Before leaving, she visited the cold case archive one last time. She opened the drawer holding Marianne's file, staring at the thick folder of photos, notes, maps, and lab reports, unchanged from nearly a decade ago. She's still out there, she whispered, gently returning the file. The technician on duty later said that after Rachel left, the cabinet's closing clank sounded like a metallic sigh. In 2015, the Cold Case Division conducted a full inventory of cases over 20 years old. They found many old samples damaged by temperature issues, but Marianne's file was intact. The inventory log noted, samples stable, retained for future DNA comparison. That year, a Harlan background check from Phoenix reported no criminal activity, no moves, still in private security. The case was marked, no activity required. Time blurred everything. Initial witnesses moved, changed numbers, Marianne's co-workers left the city. Even the Sahara building changed owners, rebranded, becoming a new hotel. Las Vegas grew, while her files sat in a cabinet corner, wedged among hundreds of forgotten names. In 2018, when the Cold Case Division digitized all files, Marianne Doyle's was scanned, assigned a new QR code, and entered into the electronic database. In the case status column, it still read, unsolved, no new leads. But at the end of the PDF, in the investigator notes section, an old 2004 note from Lieutenant Raymond Cook, yellowed, remained. If we ever get better science, this case will be the one worth reopening. No one knew that note, 15 years later, would spark a turning point, when better science arrived. But in 2018, Marianne Doyle was just a faint name in Nevada's cold police database, a number among thousands of unsolved cases, waiting for the day it would be awakened from nearly 2 decades of silence. In early 2020, as the nation grappled with pandemic paralysis, a quiet program launched in LVMPD's basement, the Nevada Cold Case Initiative. Its goal sounded dry: review all unsolved cases with stored DNA. But for those in the field, it was what they'd waited years for. For the first time, federal funding supported forensic genealogy for old cases, a tool once reserved for high-profile investigation. One of the first assigned to the project was Megan Ortiz, a 32-year-old forensic tech from UCLA, with an almost blind faith in genetic data. Her first task, review 120 cold cases in Clark County's archive, selecting those with recoverable DNA or untested samples. Scanning the 30-page list, case #0411815, possible abduction, stopped her. The note beside it read, hair and fiber samples, untested preserved. She recalled reading about the case as an intern. A disappearance with no leads, no body, just an abandoned car in a vacant lot. Untested DNA. That note was enough for Megan to choose it. She printed the file, flipping through crime scene photos, hair, fabric, the 2010 SECOTUS report with no match found. All samples remained intact in cold storage, thanks to the system doctor Lisa Moreno, set up nearly 2 decades earlier. Megan contacted Moreno, now retired, but consulting freelance. They met in the lab, amid humming stainless steel freezers. Moreno looked at the MD vehicle seat #12 sample bag and said softly, "I always believed this hair would talk, we just didn't know how to listen." Megan smiled. "Now we can." On March 12, 2020, the hair and 2 fabric scraps from Marianne's car seat were sealed and airshipped to AAM Laboratories, a pioneer in forensic genetic genealogy in Texas. This new tech could extract long DNA sequences from degraded samples, then cross-reference millions of voluntary genealogy records to find distant relatives. The process was costly and took months, but if successful, it could revive a case thought dead. In her report to the project lead, Megan wrote, Case 04-1815, candidate for FGG analysis. Sample condition, stable, viable. Potential outcome, identification via distant relative matches. As the sample envelope shipped to Texas, Megan felt something like excitement, not just for reopening a case, but for touching the work of those before her, people who failed due to tech limits. In May 2020, AAM confirmed samples were being processed, with DNA genome sequencing expected in 10-12 weeks. While waiting, Megan reviewed Harlan's file, the primary suspect. His federal record showed multiple job changes, still in Phoenix. She noted, subject alive, no recent criminal record. When Megan presented the Doyle case at an internal meeting, some senior investigators shrugged. It's a missing person case. No body, no scene. Even with DNA, you need proof a crime happened. Megan replied, "We won't know unless we try." Her tone was firm enough to silence the room. In August 2020, AAM sent an interim report, partial genome successfully sequenced, 720,000 markers extracted. They had enough data to trace distant lineage. From Texas, Dr. New Mallory, the analysis lead, called Megan. "Ortiz, this DNA held up after 16 years. Whoever stored it did a hell of a job." Megan replied, "Her name's Lisa Moreno. She kept it for this day." By December, AAM moved the Doyle case to genealogy analysis. Data was uploaded to GED Match and Family Tree DNA, the largest voluntary U.S. databases. Matching algorithms began searching millions of profiles for genetic overlaps. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, Megan and a young investigative team rebuilt the case timeline, not just to confirm DNA, but to prepare for a potential full reinvestigation. On Christmas Eve 2020, LVMPD's lab was nearly empty. Megan stayed late, opening Marianne Doyle's photo, a 29-year-old woman with a gentle smile in her hotel uniform. She placed it beside the screen displaying a genetic chart, ATG sequences scrolling like endless waves. "If you're still out there," she whispered, "science is strong enough to find you now." She didn't know that just over a year later, that DNA would talk, and its story would lead them back to the desert, to the Toyota's abandoned lot, to uncover a secret Las Vegas had buried for nearly 2 decades. But in that moment, in 2020, in the cold room under dim white lights, all Megan knew was the Doyle case was no longer cold. It was smoldering hotter by the hour, beneath the dust of time. In October 2021, exactly 17 years after Marianne Doyle vanished, a thick envelope from Texas arrived at the Clark County Criminalistics Lab. The label read, "Confidential, AAM Laboratories, Genetic Genealogy Report, Case 04-1815. Technician, Megan Ortiz received it in silence, a strange chill running down her spine as she placed the envelope on the stainless steel table. Protocol required the lead investigator to review the results first. The case name was all too familiar in the department, but the person assigned to reopen it was none other than Detective Rachel Monroe, the young investigator from the 2004 Doyle case. Rachel, now 45, was one of LVMPD's most seasoned female investigators. When Megan called about the report, her voice trembled slightly. "Rachel, AAM sent the DNA match results for the Doyle case. They want you to sign for it directly." For a moment, Rachel was silent, as if the name Doyle stirred a buried part of her past. "Send it to my office," she replied softly. That afternoon, in the cold case unit's small meeting room, Rachel opened the sealed envelope. The report, nearly 40 pages, bore the AAM Laboratories logo. The first page stated clearly, "Subject of analysis, unidentified male DNA result. STR and autosomal DNA match to subject Russell Dean Harland, DOD. September 12, 1967. Current residence, Phoenix, Arizona. Probability of match, 1 in 2.1 quintillion." Rachel reread the name, Russell Dean Harland. It had haunted her for nearly 2 decades. The night shift guard who quit the morning after Marianne vanished. The man who sat across from her in the interrogation room, calmly saying, "I just waved to her." Now his DNA was confirmed in the victim's car, undeniable. Megan stood beside her, voice low. "We're certain. 99.99999%. Rachel didn't look at her, exhaling slowly. "No," she said. "It's 100% now." The report included a thick appendix detailing the testing process, extracting genetic material from the hair and seat fabric, cross-referencing with genealogy databases. AAM identified 3 distant relatives matching the suspect's DNA, building a family tree that traced back to one man, Russell Harland, 54, living in suburban Phoenix. Civil records showed he was arrested in 2001 for harassing a female bartender in Henderson, but the case was dropped for lack of evidence. After leaving Nevada, he moved to Arizona, briefly changed his surname, and worked security for various residential complexes. Rachel set the report down, arms crossed. "He never left our radar," she said quietly. "We just stopped looking." Her old boss, Cook, now retired, had once said something she never forgot. "If he's guilty, he'll show up in the system, sooner or later." And now he had, through DNA strands he couldn't erase. The next day, Rachel signed to officially reopen the Marianne Doyle case. The file's status changed from unsolved, inactive to active investigation. Old documents were pulled from storage, spread across a large table in the cold case division. Maps, crime scene photos, forensic reports, 2004 statements. Among them, Marianne's photo, reprinted from the original, still held her small smile, now a witness to a comeback. Rachel started by reviewing old data. The 2004 report noted a partial thumbprint matching Harland at 8/12 points, insufficient then. Now, with new AFI's technology, she requested a rescan. 2 days later, the tech lab emailed, "Fingerprint reanalysis complete, confirmed match to Harland." Now, nothing was missing. DNA, fingerprints, history, and timing. She called Megan to her office, handing her the case file. "Ortiz, you restarted a case. This city forgot. Now it's our turn to finish it." Megan smiled, eyes bright. "You're redoing the investigation?" "Completely," Rachel replied. "Start to finish. No stone unturned." Over the next days, Rachel and a small team of 3 investigators reconstructed Harland's timeline since leaving the Sahara Hotel. Personnel records confirmed he quit the morning of August 15, 2004, withdrew his remaining pay, and left Las Vegas that evening. Bank records showed a cash withdrawal at an ATM near Henderson at 7:42 p.m. Then he vanished from all systems. In 2006, he registered as Russ Dean Harwood in Phoenix, using his old Social Security number. In Arizona, he lived quietly, working as a building security guard, with no further charges. Until the 2021 DNA report tied him to a case he thought was buried. When Rachel wrote her report for the Clark County DA's office, she stated clearly, "We now have conclusive DNA and fingerprint evidence linking suspect Russell Dean Harland to the vehicle and belongings of missing victim Mary Ann Doyle. The likelihood of transfer contamination is 0. Recommend full reinvestigation and coordination with Phoenix PD for surveillance and potential warrant." The report was approved within 48 hours. A closed-door meeting was held between LVMPD, the FBI, and Phoenix PD to plan. Rachel was named lead detective, with Megan overseeing forensic evidence. As the meeting ended, Rachel lingered, looking at a screen displaying Harland's younger photo, a 2004 ID. His eyes were cold as glass, gaze empty. 17 years, she said softly. Now it's his turn to look back. That evening, as Las Vegas glowed as always, Rachel drove past the old Sahara Road, once the employee lot, now leveled and rebuilt as a new parking area. She stopped, turned off the engine, stepped out, and looked around. No trace of Mary Ann remained, but the wind still blew, carrying the desert's dry metallic scent. In her duty log that day, Rachel wrote, October 17, 2021, DNA match confirmed. The name Russell Harland reappeared after 17 years. Science didn't forget what we couldn't prove. In below, she added by hand. Tomorrow, we start again. Tomorrow, the official reinvestigation of the Doyle case would begin, with the same investigator, but a different Las Vegas. Older, colder, and equipped with technology to hear what DNA whispered from the past. The next day, as dawn cast a gray-gold hue over the mountains east of Las Vegas, Rachel was at the old Sahara Hotel's administrative archive, now renamed, under new ownership, with most 2000's personnel records stored in the corporation's private archive. It took 3 days and a court order to access the 2004 paper files, brown folders thick with dust in a cold storage room. Each bore employee codes and work dates, written in faded marker. When she pulled the file labeled #SEC 221, Harland, Russell D., Rachel paused. Gloved, she turned the pages. Inside was his July 2004 employment contract, a background file with a photo of a 36-year-old man, face hard and cold. At the end was his handwritten resignation, dated August 16, 2004, 1 day after Mary Ann vanished. His slanted writing read, "Health issues. Unable to continue shift duties. Effective immediately." Below was his neat signature, R. Harland, and a same-day AP-proved stamp from the night shift supervisor. No leave request, no notice. It matched perfectly with what Rachel remembered. He left when she did. She cross-checked the August 2004 security shift schedule. Harland was assigned the night of August 14th to 15, matching Mary Ann's shift, and swapped his August 15th shift without reason. The supervisor notes section was blank. Meanwhile, Mary Ann worked a late shift until 12:30 a.m., logged in the housekeeping roster. The timelines, after 17 years, locked together like puzzle pieces. Rachel sat before the files, marking details in red. His shift matches disappearance time. Quit the next day. The picture was forming. She photographed the records, digitized them, and sent copies to Megan for signature and handwriting verification. Within 24 hours, forensics confirmed the handwriting matched Harland's bank documents and birth certificate. But what caught Rachel's eye was a small internal report tucked in the file, titled Guest Interaction, Security Note, written by housekeeper Alma Castillo on August 10, 2004, 4 days before Mary Ann's disappearance. The first sentence stopped Rachel. "I saw the new guard Harland waiting at the 12th floor elevator when Mary Ann's shift ended. He asked about her hours." Alma described leaving late that night and seeing Harland leaning against the wall near the employee elevator, with no clear work reason. When asked, he said he was checking the hallway. When Mary Ann stepped out, he smiled, his gaze lingering in a way that made Alma uncomfortable. The report wasn't sent to HR, only filed internally, likely because no formal complaint was made. Rachel carefully enlarged the copy, reading the scrawled words. He kept watching her. 4 words, but to Rachel, they were the peace she'd sought for 17 years. She immediately contacted Alma, now nearly 50, living in Reno. The call was marked by long silences. "Do you remember Harland?" Rachel asked. A pause. Then Alma's hoarse voice came through. "I remember." He looked at her the way men look when they want control. Rachel went quiet for a moment. "Why didn't you tell police then?" Alma sighed. "I wrote the report, but management said, don't make a big deal. I was just hired help." He wore a guard's uniform. The call lasted under 10 minutes, but gave Rachel enough for a new statement. Now beyond DNA, she had behavioral evidence. Harland's unusual interest in the victim. On October 25, 2021, Rachel presented her findings to the cold case team. On a large screen, she projected a timeline, the 14th of August 2004, 0:37 a.m. Marianne leaves shift, last seen on camera. The 14th of August 2004, 0:42 a.m. Harland's security card opens lot gate. The 15th of August 2004, 7 a.m. Harland quits without notice. October 8, 2004, staff report. Harland waits for Marianne at elevator. "This is no longer coincidence," Rachel said. Voice low but clear. "This is a deliberate chain of actions, and DNA confirms he was in her car." She ended the meeting by signing an internal memo. Russell Dean Harland, designated as primary suspect, recommends surveillance and extradition coordination with Phoenix PD. The memo officially reinstated Harland as the prime suspect after 17 years. That evening, Rachel sat alone in the records room, yellow light falling on worn papers. She reread Alma's 2004 report, lingering on "he kept watching her." Something in that fixation chilled her, not from fear but from realizing Harland didn't just pick Marianne randomly. He'd watched her, waited for the moment to act. In her small notebook, Rachel wrote one line, "Thought buddy." He stood at the elevator before she vanished. Now he'll stand in court. Outside the window, Las Vegas glowed. Lights that never dimmed. But in that small room, piecing together lost time. Rachel knew the Doyle case was no longer a story of the past. It was alive, clearer than ever, with a name she'd never forget. Russell Harland. 2 days after finishing the personnel files, Rachel returned to the Clark County Criminalistics Lab with Megan Ortiz. The old evidence, sealed bags with fabric, hair, and fingerprint scans, was brought out again, placed on a cold metal table. White fluorescent light reflected off the nylon bags. The faded 2004 labels, a reminder that 17 years had passed, but truth never rusted. "We need to recheck everything," Rachel said, voice steady, but eyes tense. "I want no room for him to hide." Megan nodded, gloved, opening each evidence bag, arranging them by analysis priority. The first sample was the fabric from the Corolla's driver's seat gap. Under the microscope, the fiber's structure was clear. Dark green polyester, cross-woven, typical for security guard pants. Megan compared it to a 2004 Sahara uniform sample from the personnel archive. The screen showed 100% match in fabric type and weave pattern. "No mistake," she said, gripping the lens. "This fabric was custom-made for Sahara's security team back then. No one else had it." Rachel leaned toward the screen, lips tight. So he was in her car, or worse, leaning in to pull her out. The second sample was the 2004 fingerprint scan, once deemed insufficient. Now new AFIS technology allowed micro-detail matching. The technician ran the scan, pulling Harland's print from his personnel file. The computer processed for seconds, then displayed in green. Match, 8/12 confirmed, extended match, 11/12 probable. A number strong enough for any prosecutor. Rachel took a deep breath. 17 years, 1 point shy of perfect, she said softly. But we don't need perfect anymore. This is enough. Finally, they opened the hair sample, the key evidence. A dark brown strand labeled seat#12, rear. Megan fed it into the next-gen DNA analyzer. Genetic data streamed across the screen, thousands of ATGC markers, Results took 3 minutes, 99.97% match to Russell Dean Harlan's DNA in AAM's records. No room for denial. Rachel stood straight, arms still crossed, staring at the glowing data. DNA, fabric, fingerprints, she said slowly. 3 layers of evidence, all saying the same thing. Megan nodded, almost exhaling in relief. He was in her car, Rachel, no doubt left. That evening, Rachel sat in her office, surrounded by old crime scene photos, the dusty Corolla, its door ajar, purse on the passenger seat. Each piece of evidence was now a silent witness, telling the story they couldn't hear in 2004. She turned on her recorder, dictating that evidence re-examination confirms. Fabric matches Sahara security uniform. Gear shift fingerprint matches Harlan. Hair DNA confirms Harlan's presence in victim's car. Conclusion: suspect was at the scene, highly likely had direct contact with victim. But for Rachel, evidence wasn't enough. She needed him in person, in a room, to look in his eyes and see him falter. She knew an arrest required a second confirming DNA sample from a current source to avoid contamination disputes. The only way, covert collection. The next morning, Rachel walked into the Clark County DA's office with a thick file. Dana Sullivan, the lead prosecutor who'd handled many cold cases, read each page closely. "You want a surveillance order and covert DNA collection?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "No body, no confession, just DNA from the car." Rachel replied curtly, "I don't need him to confess. I need to prove he lied." Dana leaned back, pensive. "You sure he's still in Phoenix?" "Certain. Phoenix PD's tracking him. He's a security guard at Desert Storage and Freight, night shift. Lives alone, no wife or kids. And your plan? We'll collect from discarded items, coffee cup, cigarette, straw. Match it to the 2004 DNA. If it hits, we'll get an arrest warrant." Dana looked at Rachel, a hint of respect in her eyes. 17 years, and you haven't let this go." Rachel gave a faint smile. "I didn't chase it for 17 years. It chased me." The surveillance order was approved in 2 days. Rachel formed a 3-person team, herself, an FBI liaison, and Megan handling forensics. They flew to Phoenix, carrying the heavy file, maps, and Harlan's latest photo, a 54-year-old man with salt and pepper hair, face still square, but eyes dull as stone. As their SUV crossed the Nevada-Arizona border, Rachel sat quietly, staring at the shimmering desert plains outside. The landscape hadn't changed much in 17 years. Same dry earth, same scent of sand and iron in the wind. But this time, she wasn't the young officer searching for answers. She was about to face the man DNA had named. That evening, Rachel's team parked a few hundred meters from Harlan's workplace. From a distance, they saw him step out of the warehouse, light a cigarette, and stand under a dim yellow lot light, calm, as if the world had forgotten his name. He drank coffee from a white paper cup, finished the cigarette, and tossed both to the ground before heading back inside. Rachel signaled. A plainclothes officer walked over, gloved, and bagged the cup and cigarette butt. She looked at the cup in her hand, the Desert Storage logo catching the light. A strange feeling surged, cold yet clear, like desert wind over metal. 17 years, she whispered. And now he's left the trail for us. Late that night, they returned to their hotel. Megan sat at her laptop, extracting a sample from the cup's rim into a vial, sending it to LVMPD's lab via express courier. Rachel watched the clock, its second hand crawling. She knew when the results came back, they'd end her half-life of obsession or unleash a new storm. 2 days later, the report arrived. DNA sample, confirmed identical to suspect DNA from vehicle sample #12. Probability, 1 in 2.4 quintillion. Rachel read the final line, gently setting the paper down. In the quiet room, only the hum of the air conditioner and the wind outside filled the space. She closed her eyes, saying softly, "Now he can't say I just waved to her anymore." Outside, the Arizona desert stayed silent, but in that room, the silence cracked. And in that crack, Rachel knew the wheels of justice had begun to roll again, slowly but unstoppable. The confirmed DNA results were enough for Rachel to request a preliminary arrest warrant, but she wanted to push further to make the entire picture fit perfectly, leaving no room for Harlan to deny. After an internal meeting, she contacted the FBI Las Vegas field office, requesting technical assistance to recover 2004 cell signal data, once deemed unretrievable because the old BTS system had been offline for nearly 2 decades. When the FBI's data recovery team received the request, they went silent for a few seconds. "You want us to pull tower logs from 2004? A technician asked, voice half skeptical, half intrigued. Rachel replied curtly, "If you can, it's the final piece of a 17-year chain." 3 weeks later, Quantico sent a hard drive with raw data, timecode strips, tower coordinates, and fragmented signal logs, extracted from the archives of Pacific Wireless, now merged. They called it digital archaeology. Rachel sat with 2 tech specialists, piecing together each timestamp like a puzzle. The screen displayed 2 colored lines, red for Marianne's phone signal, green for Harlan's. From 11:50 p.m. to 12:37 a.m., Marianne's signal moved within the Sahara's premises, matching her shift's end. At 12:39, it pinged the employee parking lot. At 12:42, the car moved east, leaving the strip, averaging 37 miles per hour. Then, at exactly 12:48 a.m., both red and green signals vanished simultaneously in sunrise manner, near Boulder Highway's intersection. Not fading, not drifting, just gone. A sudden break. Rachel stared at the screen, brows slightly furrowed. Same place, same time. Not a coincidence. She requested a reconstruction of the route using traffic logs and period maps. A 3D image appeared, the road stretching from Sahara Avenue through Desert Inn Road, cutting east. The route ended at the barren lot where 17 years ago the patrol found the Corolla, Megan whispered. Where the signals dropped is where the car was left. Rachel nodded, voice low, meaning he turned off the phone right after leaving there. Or someone did it for him. She requested further analysis of BTS login logs near the area after 1 a.m., and FBI tech reported only one device reactivated at 1:06. With the same serial number as Harlan's phone, but it pinged over 20 miles away in South Henderson. If he kept moving, Rachel said, 18 minutes was enough to hide a body and leave the area. Her words sank the room into silence. No one spoke. Rachel stood, walked to the wall-mounted map, and drew red lines connecting points. Sahara Hotel, Boulder Highway, Sunrise Manor, Nellis Blauved. The lines crisscrossed, but when connected, formed a near-perfect arc ending at the vacant lot from years ago. She sat, opening a copy of the 2004 report, vehicle recovered, keys missing, no struggle evident, probable voluntary exit. Rachel gave a cold smile. Voluntary exit, no one willingly vanishes at the same time as the phone of someone stalking them. At the next morning's meeting, she presented the data to Prosecutor Dana and the FBI tech team. When the 3D graphic of the route played, showing 2 dots, red and green, moving through Vegas's late-night streets, the room dimmed. As they stopped and vanished together, silence fell. 12:48 a.m., Rachel said. The last moment Marianne Doyle existed on the map, and the moment Russell Harlan started vanishing from his clean record. An agent asked, could he have just been there by chance? Rachel turned, eyes sharp. How many people coincidentally lose signal within 50 meters and have their DNA in the victim's car 20 years later? The tech panel validated the analysis. The FBI agreed to trace Harlan's vehicle movements through archived traffic systems. Some intersection cameras still had raw backups. After extraction, Rachel found a blurry frame, 12:46 a.m., at Boulder HWY and Marion Drive, a streetlight flickering, a faint Toyota Corolla heading east. In the next frame, a dark pickup appeared behind it, headlights sweeping the camera, just clear enough to show a faded logo, Sahara Security Services. Rachel didn't look away. The truck he drove on patrol, same time, same direction. Her voice dropped, almost to herself. He wasn't just the last to see her. He followed her, mile by mile, until they both vanished. When the meeting ended, Dana approached, placing a hand on Rachel's shoulder. The picture's complete, from signals to DNA, from location to timing. We have enough for an arrest. Rachel nodded slightly, but a fire still burned in her eyes. She knew these facts didn't just prove Harlan's guilt. They retraced that night's journey with the clarity of data and the shadow of a ruthless choice. That evening, Rachel sat alone in her office, staring at the computer screen, displaying the reconstructed route. A small text blinked in the corner. Sunrise Manor. Signal lost at 12:48 a.m. She whispered, almost a prayer, that night, you stopped here. But now we've found you. Outside, Vegas glowed as if it never slept. But in the small investigation room, the map's blue light was the only thing telling a story, one the data had kept silent for nearly 2 decades, now finally speaking. In early January 2023, Phoenix's sky was gray and still, a thin sunlight dusting the dry desert gold. After the FBI confirmed the signal and DNA matches, a federal arrest warrant was issued by the Clark County District Court. At 5:40 a.m., a task force, Rachel, 2 Phoenix PD officers, and an FBI agent, raided Boarding House Unit 11 on North 27th Avenue. 3 loud knocks. Police. Search warrant. Silence. On the 4th, they breached the door. He stood in the room's center, in a gray sweater, hair disheveled, unsurprised. Russell Harlan, Rachel said firmly. You're under arrest for the suspected kidnapping and murder of Marianne Doyle in 2004, Las Vegas. He looked at her, eyes narrowing, then gave a faint, weary smile, as if this was the moment he'd always expected. As 2 officers cuffed him, he tilted his head, saying softly but clearly enough for Rachel to hear, "You think you found her?" The words stopped her. The room felt thick. The cuffs clicked sharply. She stared into his eyes, searching for a challenge or a veiled confession. But he only lowered his head, smile fading, and went silent. During the escort, Rachel sat in the back, watching yellow streetlights streak past the car window. He said nothing more. As they drove the highway toward Vegas, he glanced out, voice low, almost a whisper. 17 years, detective. You sure she wants to be found? His tone eerily calm. Rachel didn't respond, just opened her notebook and wrote every word. She knew men like Harlan sometimes spoke truth in riddles, and each phrase could be a clue or a devil's game. That afternoon, at the Phoenix police station, Harlan was handed to the FBI for federal charges before extradition to Las Vegas. Local media began leaking LVMPD, Rupin's 2004 missing person case, suspect arrested in Phoenix. A photo of Harlan, head bowed, sunlight glinting off his cuffs, hit the Arizona Republic's front page. In a brief press room, Rachel answered concisely, "We can't comment on case details, but we have sufficient scientific evidence linking the suspect directly to Marianne Doyle's disappearance." A reporter asked, "Has the victim been found?" Rachel paused, then said, "Not yet, but we know where she stopped." LVMPD's interrogation room, on the 3rd floor, had thick steel doors and white light so cold it felt like formalin. Russell Harlan sat at the table's center, hands cuffed, stubbled chin, eyes sunken like someone sleepless for months. 17 years on the run had worn him, but his calm remained, as it had when he said, "You think you found her?" Rachel entered with FBI agent Mark Rivera. She set a paper coffee cup on the table, saying nothing for the first few minutes. He glanced at the cup, then at her, mouth twitching. "I'm not thirsty." "No matter," Rachel replied evenly. "I brought it to help you remember." She sat, opening the thick file. He tracked her movements, eyes narrowing as she turned the first page. A DNA report with his name and a red full genetic match. Rachel slid it toward him. "This is you," she said. "Your DNA from Marianne Doyle's car. Your DNA from a Phoenix coffee cup last month. Perfect match." He stayed silent, unmoving. Rachel glanced at the clock, the 7th minute of questioning. She spread a map across the table, the route from Sahara Hotel to Sunrise Manor, looping to the vacant lot near Nellis Boulevard. And this, she said, finger touching a red dot, is where your phone and hers lost signal. Where we found the Corolla. Harlan didn't respond. Only the overhead light reflected off his cuffs, flickering. Rachel continued, voice lowering, tinged with the fatigue of chasing a shadow too long. You know, we've searched for 17 years. No one remembers her anymore, except a few with her photo in a drawer. But I haven't gone a night without thinking about this. I want to know why. A twitch at his mouth's corner. Still silent. Rachel opened a photo from the Boulder Highway camera, blurry the Corolla ahead, a Sahara security black pickup trailing. You weren't just there by chance, you followed her. The room grew heavy. Mark Rivera placed Harlan's 2004 Sahara employment certificate, with his resignation signature dated August 16, 2 days after Marianne vanished. Rachel pushed it forward. You can stay silent, but silence is an answer too. Harlan leaned back, eyes on the ceiling, lips pursed. The air conditioner hummed steadily. She waited. 1 minute, 5, 10. Then, he exhaled, a heavy sound torn from his chest. She didn't deserve what happened. His voice was hoarse, trembling, as if unused to words. Rachel froze, eyes locked on him. What did you say? She didn't deserve it. Not that night. Rachel felt her heart tighten. She kept her voice steady. What happened that night, Russell? He looked at the table, cuffed hands clenching. She wanted to leave the job, he said slowly. She said she was tired of men like me watching her walk to her car. I offered to escort her, but she laughed. Not cruel, just tired. He paused, eyes distant. I followed her. I shouldn't have. She saw me behind her car. I just wanted to talk, but when she panicked, I tried to stop her from screaming. Rachel said nothing. No one moved. He took a deep breath, as if pulling the next words from a memory's abyss. I buried her myself. The words fell like stone. Rachel felt the air in her lungs freeze. Mark Rivera looked up, eyes wide, hand brushing the recorder to ensure it captured everything. He continued, voice almost a monologue. The sand east of the city, that's where. It was still construction land. Then, dunes and pits. I dug with my hands. No one came. Rachel stared at him. Where exactly? Near Boulder Highway. Harlan nodded slightly, then gave a weak smile. You'll see, it's still there. No one builds too close to the wind. A shiver ran down her spine. I need a specific location, Russell. If you want anyone to believe you're remorseful, tell me where she is. He looked up, his eyes, for the first time, almost human, no longer steely. I'll tell you, he said softly, but not with him here. He glanced at Mark Rivera. Just you, detective. You brought her back. Rachel looked at Mark. A slow nod, and he stepped out, leaving the door ajar. Inside, only the faint hum of fluorescent lights remained. He leaned forward, voice a near whisper. There's a drainage trench east of Nellis, past the old quarry. A mesquite tree, with a twisted trunk. I buried her under that. I covered it with concrete from a mixer left on site. That's why you never found her. Rachel sat motionless, gripping her pen until her knuckles whitened. She wrote every word, every marker, every direction. When he stopped, she asked, You did this, alone? He nodded. No one else knew. I kept that secret because I thought if nobody knew, maybe it didn't happen. She stood, silent for a moment, then looked at him. Now everyone will know. Harlan lowered his head. Then maybe I can sleep. When Rachel left the interrogation room, her eyes met the hallway's bright light, her breath trembling. Megan waited outside, asking softly. He talked, Rachel nodded. He buried her east of the city. Megan blinked. You think he's telling the truth? Rachel replied quietly, almost a whisper. I think he wants to be believed. As the team prepared a new site search warrant, Rachel glanced back at the two-way mirror, where Harlan sat alone, head bowed, the light casting a small halo around him. He'd confessed, not for forgiveness, but like a tired man burying himself alongside the woman he'd buried in the desert, 17 years ago. Rachel returned to the interrogation room 10 minutes later, carrying detailed topographic maps of eastern Las Vegas. Harlan sat in the same spot, head down, cuffed wrists resting on the steel table. When she placed the map down, he looked up, his eyes less cold, replaced by a strange exhaustion, as if finally ready to shed a burden he'd carried for nearly 2 decades. "Russell," Rachel began slowly, "you said the sand east of the city. I need the exact location. Every mile, every direction." He was silent for a few seconds, then sighed, voice hoarse. "It's near Lake Mead, the recreation area. About 25 miles out. You take Boulder Highway east, past the old Ranger checkpoint. There's a dirt road, wasn't paved then, that cuts toward the lake." He looked at her, blinking slowly. "You won't see much now. Time and dust covered everything." Rachel pulled out a ballpoint pen, opening a 150,000 color map. "Show me," she said, sliding the paper toward him. Harlan leaned down, hands trembling from the cuffs, the pen wobbling as it drew curving lines, ink pressing deep. "Here," he said, marking a small point near Boulder Beach trailhead. "We drove up this dirt path. It was dark, no lights except the sky." He exhaled heavily, voice quieter. "She was already gone. I didn't plan to kill her, you know. I just wanted her to stop screaming." Rachel didn't respond, keeping her gaze cold, recording everything. Harlan continued, hand shaking as he drew. "There's a big rock there, white, almost chalk-colored. Looked like a skull in the moonlight. I buried her under that. I thought the stone would keep the coyotes away." His words sank the room into silence. Rachel looked at the map, where he circled the marked spot, scrawling, "Under white stone, head-shaped." She looked up. "Anything else you remember? Slope? Sun direction? Trees?" Harlan closed his eyes, as if pulling memories from deep sand. "There's a dirt road sloping south, low mesquite trees on the right, strong wind. I used a shovel from the patrol truck, dug about 4 feet. The ground was dry, tough to dig. Then I covered it, poured concrete from bags in the truck. I thought no one would dig under that rock." Rachel set her pen down, hand clenching lightly. A cold sadness ran down her spine. "Did you ever go back?" He shook his head, giving a bitter smile. "Never, but it's there, always there." She stood, signaling a forensic tech to photograph the map. Every line, arrow and mark was sealed as evidence. As an officer took the map, Harlan looked up, saying softly, almost a late confession, "You'll know the place when you see the stone. It looks like it's watching you." Rachel turned, seeing real fear in his eyes for the first time. "You'll come with us to confirm the location," she said. He shook his head slightly. "You don't need me. I already took you there once." The interrogation ended at 10:42 p.m. As Harlan was led away, Rachel stood looking at the map on the table. The red circle he marked looked like an old wound reopening. She knew the area, Lake Mead National Recreation Area, hundreds of miles wide, complex terrain, much of it eroded after years of drought. But in his eyes, she saw no liar's bravado. Something true made it hard for her to breathe. The next morning, the forensics and LVMPD special search team met urgently at the command center. Rachel presented the map, Harlan's confession, and his hand-drawn sketch. "The location is in Lake Mead Ranger Division's jurisdiction, about 25 miles from Vegas's edge," she said. "We need an urgent excavation order and coordination with the Federal Conservation Bureau." Forensic Chief Dr. Julian Harker nodded, scanning the satellite terrain map. "This area was a construction site in 2004. It may have eroded, but if there's concrete, ground-penetrating radar, we'll find it." Rachel pointed to the small circled area near Boulder Highway. He said, "Under white stone, skull-shaped, we start at that marker. I want to dig until we're certain nothing's left." The meeting ended, and the task force prepared. 2 GPR-equipped trucks, a forensic team, 2 DNA specialists, and a K-9 search unit were set to depart at 6 a.m. Rachel led them. Before leaving the station, She stood looking at Harlan's laminated, sealed sketch, marked Exhibit 14B. Those scrawled lines were now legal evidence, but to Rachel, they were something else. A dark guide, leading her to the end of a 17-year journey. That night, Vegas glowed as always, but Rachel saw only the desert waiting east. She opened her notebook, writing one line, "Tomorrow we'll find her. If the sand still remembers, it will speak." The next morning, Lake Mead's air was dry and harsh, wind whipping dust across cracked earth. The LVMPD and FBI evidence response team stopped at the dirt road east of Boulder Highway, exactly where Harlan marked. At 6 a.m., no one spoke. They exchanged glances, then began unloading equipment. Rachel stood amid the dust, hat pulled low, holding the map, eyes quiet as she scanned the terrain. Before them was pale sand mixed with limestone, and in the clearing, as he described, a large white rock, smooth, distorted like a giant's skull, lying tilted. "Set a perimeter 50 meters back from that marker," Rachel ordered. "No one enters the center until GPR scans are done." The forensic team set up stakes, yellow nylon tape forming an elliptical boundary. Doctor Julian Harker operated the ground-penetrating radar, waves appearing on the screen, each faint distortion mark. After 2 hours, one wave showed an anomaly, about 1.2 meters deep, directly under the white rock. "Solid object, distinct from the soil," Harker said, voice low. Rachel stepped closer, eyes on the screen. Depth and size, roughly adult human. No one spoke, she nodded. "Start digging." When the first shovel hit the ground, a dry, heavy sound echoed in the wind. The sand here was sticky, hardened, concrete, mixed with earth, forming a near-concrete layer. Technicians used pneumatic drills to break it apart, careful not to damage what lay beneath. Time crawled, the sun rose high, wind burning faces. 6 hours, no one left their post. Then, at 12:43 p.m., a soft call. "Got something." Everyone stopped. A technician knelt, brushing away fine sand with a soft brush. A wrist bone emerged, white, dry, brittle as porcelain. Rachel stepped forward, heart pounding. Beside it, a tarnished silver chain glinted, a small round women's watch, delicate band, stopped at 12:49. Below that, a silver ring fragment gleamed. A technician lifted it with tweezers, placing it in an evidence bag. Sunlight caught faint letters inside. MD. Rachel looked at the ring, lips trembling. No expert was needed, she knew it was Marianne's. From the 2004 file, she'd read the description. Silver ring, inner engraving, MD, birthday gift from her mother. FBI Evidence Response Team Leader, Agent Kim Hollister, recorded the scene report. 12:56 p.m. Human remains located at Lake Mead Recreation Area, coordinates 36.05, 2N, 114.832W. Jewelry recovered, silver watch, silver ring with initials, MD preliminary ID. Suggests connection to missing person Marianne Doyle, case #041815. Rachel, amid the sand, stared at the white rock gleaming under the sun. She didn't know how long she'd held her breath, only that her chest felt heavy, as if an old friend had called her name after years of being lost. By nearly 4 p.m., the remaining bones were excavated. The body was wrapped in forensic fabric, each part labeled per protocol: skull, pelvis, arm bones, leg bones. No intact clothing, only tattered beige uniform scraps, and a tarnished metal badge, Sahara Hotel and Casino, housekeeping. Julian spoke softly, eyes on the weathered skeleton. No ligature marks, no rope traces. She may have fallen or been struck before burial. Rachel asked, "Any clear skull trauma?" "Yes," he replied, pointing to the cracked skull. "Frontal trauma. Hard, deliberate. Possibly from a heavy object like a flashlight or metal handle." Rachel went still. The 2004 file noted Harlan carried a 2.2-pound steel patrol flashlight, everything aligned, every detail. As the sun dipped west, the forensic team completed recovery. Soil, concrete, and fabric samples were sealed, labeled, and sent to the Clark County lab. An ambulance carried the remains away, no siren, just quietly rolling through the heavy air. Rachel stayed last. She knelt, lightly touching the smoothed earth, where a faint excavation pit remained. 17 years, she whispered, and you waited right here. Lake Mead's wind blew, carrying a faint dust and salt scent. That evening, the Clark County Forensic Lab's preliminary report arrived. What subject? Female remains recovered at Lake Mead. Estimated age at death 28, 30 years. Identifying features, silver watch, silver ring inscribed MD. Cause of death, blunt force trauma to the skull. No signs of binding or post-mortem relocation. DNA extraction pending. 2 days later, the official DNA results were released. The report was one line. Genetic profile, 100% match with reference sample of Mary Ann Doyle. Rachel read it in the lab, gripping the paper. Beside her, Megan exhaled, barely audible. We found her, Megan said. Rachel replied, voice hoarse. No, she let us find her. The next day, LVMPD held a press conference. Rachel didn't speak. She stood quietly behind the green backdrop, listening to the spokesperson. Today, Las Vegas police confirmed the recovery of Mary Ann Doyle's remains, missing since August 14, 2004. DNA confirms a perfect match. Autopsy results showed death by skull trauma, with no signs of binding or assault. Suspect Russell Harland is charged with first-degree murder. As the conference ended, camera flashes faded, and Rachel stepped into the empty hallway. Outside the glass, Vegas glowed as if it never slept. But inside her, everything was strangely still. She opened her notebook, adding one line to the investigation log. February 10, 2023. We found her under a white skull-shaped rock, where the wind never stops. The story was told again, in bone, sand, and silence. Closing the notebook, Rachel knew the case was closed, but the 2004 darkness lingered, buried deep in the desert sand, where a man once knelt to bury a life and the last piece of himself. February 14, 2023, 4 days after Mary Ann Doyle's remains were DNA confirmed. The Clark County Forensic Lab was lit all night, the whiteboard covered in notes, diagrams, and red arrows linking evidence like a spider web. In the room's center, Rachel, Dr. Julian Harker, and LVMPD investigators prepared the final forensic report, the document to close the case after 17 years. On the table, evidence bags were neatly aligned: hair DNA, security uniform fabric, gear shift fingerprint, silver watch, Maryland, engraved ring, and Russell Harland's hand-drawn map. Each was labeled, coded, and freshly sealed, photographed, 3D scanned, and archived digitally under case hash 0411815. Doyle, Mary Ann. Dr. Harker read the conclusion. Forensic analysis shows absolute consistency between the suspect's confession and the scene. Harland's map pinpointed the burial site within a 16-meter GPS error margin, a near-perfect match, ruling out guesswork. He paused, adjusting his glasses. Additionally, DNA from the remains matches Doyle's CODIS profile 100%, and DNA from the 2004 Corolla matches Harland completely. No gaps remain in the evidence chain. Rachel nodded, flipping through the file. Each line was a link in a 17-year silence. 2004, Doyle vanished after her Sahara Hotel and Casino shift. 2004, Toyota Corolla found at Nellis Bleved, no struggle signs. 2005-2018, file, stored in cold case division, DNA evidence preserved in freezer. 2021, sample sent to AAM Laboratories, matched to Russell Harland. 2023, confession, map and field coordinates, confirmed burial at Lake Mead Recreation Area. All aligned like a straight line through time, from the night of August 14, 2004, to the day she was found under the white rock. Julian signed the report, voice low. I've worked hundreds of homicides, but rarely seen such absolute alignment. Every detail matches terrain, soil, concrete. Watch stopped at 12:49, frontal trauma, consistent with the suspect's height and the Sahara Patrol flashlight. No room for doubt. The report was sent to the FBI's criminalistics lab for validation before reaching the Clark County prosecutor. Rachel and Agent Mark Rivera reviewed it last. We have everything, he said. DNA, location, confession, map, and indirect motive, coercive behavior leading to death. Harland thought he was just silencing her, but he killed her. Rachel looked at the map in its evidence bag. The shaky blue ink circle matched the GPS point of the Lake Mead White Rock, 36 degrees 0307, 6, Nin, 114 degree 49 54.1. You took a deep breath. No longer a theory. Now it's truth. That afternoon, at the Clark County DA's office, a special hearing finalized the charges. The small room buzzed with tension. Dana Sullivan, lead prosecutor, opened the scientific evidence, is complete. Based on the suspect's confession, DNA confirmation and forensic results, we propose two main charges. Kidnapping resulting in death and second-degree murder. An assistant asked, why not first degree? Dana replied, eyes on Rachel, no evidence shows premeditated murder. All signs point to a spontaneous act, argument, panic, leading to death. But his burial, flight, and 17-year concealment justify the maximum second-degree penalty. Rachel spoke. He didn't just kill. He held a girl, made her vanish from everyone's lives. I want the indictment to note prolonged concealment and obstruction of justice. He can't be seen as just a mistake. Dana nodded. We'll add it. You've followed this case long enough to know how to present evidence to convince a jury. They finalized State of Nevada vs. Russell D. Harland charges. Count 1. Kidnapping resulting in death. Count 2. Second-degree murder. Full DNA match between suspect and evidence. Confession corroborated by forensic location. Victim's remains recovered per suspect's map. Employment records, shift log, and witness testimony confirming contact prior to disappearance. The document was signed and stamped at 5:37 p.m. Rachel sat, eyes on the text, filed, February 14, 2023, Clark County District Court. Valentine's Day, 19 years after Doyle's 29th birthday, the day she was officially found. That evening, in the evidence storage room, Rachel walked among metal cabinets. Each item was now coded, stored in clear plastic boxes, silent like memory fragments. She paused at the box with the map, light reflecting off the plastic. The label read, Exhibit 14B, Harland Sketch Map. Recovered February 9, 2023. GPS verified. She spoke softly, as if to the departed. She was brought back by science, by persistence, not miracles. That's how justice should work. Outside, the hallway was quiet, only the air conditioner's hum. In Rachel's heart, instead of relief, was a different feeling, a bitter closure. She knew this forensic file would be presented in court, read line by line, verified by experts. But no report could capture what mattered most. Marianne Doyle shouldn't have died there, buried in sand, as if she never existed. She closed the file, signing the final command log entry. All evidence consolidated, forensic synthesis complete. Case transferred to prosecution. Justice in motion. Leaving the room, the hallway clock read 11 p.m., a strange mirrored moment in the Vegas night. Rachel paused, giving a sad smile. If anyone's listening, I hope they know. We didn't forget. Somewhere in the forensic freezer, Marianne Doyle's tiny DNA sample rested, linking a night of disappearance to the day. Justice was finally written in facts, coordinates, and people who refused to let truth stay buried another day. April 10, 2023, Clark County Court opened the trial for State of Nevada v. Russell Dean Harland. Courtroom 7 was packed, the air thick, as if the desert outside pressed into the four walls. Reporters crowded the back, camera lenses aimed at the defendant's bench. There, Russell Harland, now 54, sat in a pale gray prison-issued shirt, face rigid, hands resting before him. uncuffed but trembling slightly, as if accustomed to chains. At the prosecution table, Dana Sullivan neatly stacked a thick file, pages marked with colored tabs. Beside her was Detective Rachel Monroe, who'd chased this case for 17 years, now sitting silently like a shadow, eyes fixed on Harland. Across, defense attorney Alan Kessler, a civil case veteran, now court-appointed for Harland, arranged his thin papers, trying to stay calm, but his eyes darted to the jury, seeking an anchor. When Judge Eleanor Frost struck her gavel, the room hushed. Court is now in session. The trial began. Dana stood first. She stepped to the room's center, light catching her calm but resolute face. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "this is not a case about an accidental death. This is the story of a 29-year-old woman, Mary Ann Doyle, who left her job at the Sahara Hotel one August night in 2004 and never returned." She paused, voice lowering. For 17 years, that file sat silent until science, persistence, and justice pulled her from the earth. Today, you'll see evidence, testimony, and a map drawn by the defendant himself, pointing to one truth. Russell Harland took her life and buried her under a white rock at Lake Mead. Some in the gallery swallowed hard. Dana returned to her table, opening the file, pulling the first page. "We will prove with a closed chain of evidence, confession, DNA, physical evidence, and recovery location. No link is broken. And in the end, we'll name her, not as a missing person, but as a victim found." As she sat, the courtroom barely breathed. Attorney Kessler stood, lean, voice dry and cold. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client doesn't deny knowing Miss Doyle, but his confession, the map, the details was given after exhaustion. Over 10 hours of interrogation. We'll show this confessions resulted from psychological coercion, not free will." He glanced at Harland, then turned. "No witnesses, no video of a crime, only a story and assumptions built from scattered data. We trust you'll see the difference between science and speculation." Day 2, the prosecution called witnesses. First was Detective Rachel Monroe. She took the stand, swore on the Bible, and faced the jury. Dana asked, "Detective Monroe, can you summarize the reinvestigation of the Doyle case?" Rachel answered, voice steady, each word heavy. "We reopened the file in 2020 under the Nevada Cold Case Initiative. Unanalyzed DNA from the victim's car was sent to AAM laboratories in Texas. Results returned in October 2021, confirming a 100% match to Russell Harland, a 2004 Sahara Hotel security guard." Dana approached, holding an evidence photo. "What is this?" "It's a map drawn by the defendant during the February 9, 2023 interrogation, showing the victim's burial location." "And you were present at that interrogation?" "Yes, I conducted it." "Was this map drawn voluntarily?" Rachel looked at the defense attorney. "Completely voluntary. No threats, no coercion. All recorded and monitored by a federal agent." Dana turned to the judge. "Permission to play the video." A large screen lit up, grainy yellow footage, faint ceiling fan hum. Harland sat, head bowed. Rachel placing the map down. No shouting, no force, just his sigh. Then clear words. "She didn't deserve what happened. I buried her myself." The room fell silent. Judge Frost nodded. "Admitted into evidence." Kessler jumped up. "Objection. This video was recorded after hours of interrogation. My client may have been exhausted." The judge replied sharply. "Objection overruled." The court recognizes the voluntary nature of the confession. After the video, the prosecution showed Lake Mead excavation photos, forensic workers digging under the white rock, the silver watch, the MD engraved ring, the skull wrapped in white cloth. The jury sat silent. A woman wiped tears. Dana stepped forward. "These images aren't for emotion. They're fact, proof this man knew exactly where she lay, and only the one who buried her would know." Day 3, the forensic team testified. Dr. Julian Harker presented the scientific report. "We confirmed the excavation site matches the defendant's map with a GPS error under 20 meters. DNA from the victim's femur matches Doyle's CODIS profile perfectly. No signs of post-burial relocation. Fatal injury? Dana asked. Frontal skull trauma. The fracture aligns perfectly with the defendant's height and a heavy cylindrical metal object. Like a security patrol flashlight? Exactly. Kessler objected. No evidence proves Mr. Harland still had that flashlight, his accurator replied. True, but the bones mark is the language of the weapon, and it speaks clearer than any object. Day 4, the defense called Harland. He looked weary, pale, salt and pepper hair disheveled. Kessler asked softly, loud enough for the mic. Mr. Harland, do you admit to killing Miss Doyle? He looked up at the jury, voice hoarse. No, I didn't plan it. It was an accident. She fell. Why did you bury her? He pursed his lips. I panicked. No one would believe me. Did police pressure you to confess? He nodded slightly. They kept me there for hours. I was tired. I just wanted it to stop. Kessler turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the words of an exhausted man, not a confessed killer. When Dana cross-examined, her voice cut like a blade. Mr. Harland, if she fell, why drive 25 miles to Lake Mead and dig a hole over a meter deep at night? Why pour concrete over it? And why draw a map accurate to the meter? Harland went silent, eyes sliding to Rachel. I was scared, he said softly. Scared enough to bury her, like a secret? Dana asked, voice low. He didn't answer. The judge took notes. Murmurs rippled through the gallery, but Rachel kept her eyes on him. She knew that look, of someone who'd seen death and feared only being seen through. The trial entered its second week. Dana presented Harland's original hand-drawn map in a clear plastic frame. She said, this map, drawn by the defendant, matches the GPS coordinates of the remains excavation site. No outsider could know this detail. Even if he denies intent to kill, hiding the body shows consciousness of guilt. Nevada law doesn't call that an accident. The judge nodded, admitting the map as Exhibit 14B. Next came excavation photos, Lake Mead scene videos, and DNA result copies. Dana closed her argument. She was found, ladies and gentlemen. Not because of him, but because of those who believe truth doesn't rot like sand. On the final argument day, Judge Frost called a recess for jury deliberation. The room was silent. Rachel stood, looking around. Light poured through the glass, catching the wooden benches. Harland sat, head bowed, eyes dark, no anger, just something like surrender. Outside, reporters waited. Headlines flashed on phones. Las Vegas cold case breaks court. Silence. Harland faces life sentence. But for Rachel, there was no applause, no thrill, only a cold relief, as if justice those served couldn't fill the void Marianne Doyle left. As night fell on Clark Avenue, sirens blended with Vegas's red-gold lights. Rachel knew, tomorrow, the verdict would come, and the 17-year story would end, not in blood, but in the law's written word. April 17, 2023. Outside Clark County Courthouse, Las Vegas's sky was dry and strangely still. Golden sunlight grazed old stone columns, reflecting off glass like time's dust coating everything. Inside courtroom 7, no one spoke. Only creaking wooden chairs and reporters' quick breaths filled the air. 6 hours had passed since the jury retired to deliberate. 6 hours of silence, stretching like 17 years. Rachel sat in the third row, clutching her notebook, eyes fixed on the closed wooden door where the jury had exited. Dana Sullivan, the prosecutor, sat beside her, impossibly calm, though her fingers tapped the table's edge. Across, Attorney Kessler stared at the floor, avoiding reporters' lights. Harland sat upright, uncuffed, but his wrists trembled in his gray prison shirt. He said nothing. Eyes distant, aimless. A gaze that had lost the will to fight. The door opened. The 12 jurors returned, led by the foreperson, a middle-aged man with glasses, holding a folded paper. The room held its breath. Judge Eleanor Frost nodded, voice low. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? The foreperson replied, "We have, Your Honor." The paper was passed to the judge. She opened it, read quickly, then looked down. "Defendant, please rise." Harlan stood, shoulders trembling, eyes fixed on the bench. Rachel felt her heart pound, a slow, deep beat, like a distant drum. The judge read loudly, each word clear in the silent room. In the case of State of Nevada versus Russell Dean Harlan, on count 1, kidnapping resulting in death, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. On count 2, second-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. A murmur swept the courtroom, then hushed. Harlan lowered his head, eyes closing, as if he'd heard this in dreams many times. No tears, just a weary, empty expression, like a man who'd walked into darkness long ago and now only received confirmation it was real. Judge Frost looked at the defendant, voice steady, firm, Russell Dean Harlan. Based on the unanimous verdict of the jury and the weight of evidence presented before this court, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. You will serve your sentence in Ely State Maximum Security Prison. The gavel struck 3 times. The room erupted with camera clicks, recorders, and someone's relieved sigh. But Rachel stood slowly, eyes still on Harlan. He turned, their gazes meeting, no challenge, no hate, just a crooked, faded smile. He said softly, unheard by others, "Now you really found her." Rachel froze, then watched as 2 officers escorted him out. The steel door closed, its hinges slow and dry, like a book shutting after too many years left open. That afternoon, in LVMPD's temporary office, Rachel sat alone by her computer. The internal database showed a familiar line, case #0411815, Doyle, Marianne. Below was case status, missing detective. She moved the cursor, opening the update tab. The system prompted a new status. Rachel took a deep breath, hand moving slowly to the drop-down, selecting 8 homicide. Closed. A small window popped up for confirmation. Update case status. Are you sure? Rachel stared at the text, then clicked yes. The screen flashed, displaying case status, homicide. Closed. Below a subline, primary suspect convicted. Life without parole. She sat still, looking at the words, feeling no victory, only a vague, almost sad stillness. Sometimes, justice didn't bring satisfaction, it only left an empty space where obsession once lived. 3 days later, a small ceremony was held in LVMPD's back courtyard. No media, no cameras, just Rachel, Megan Ortiz, Dr. Julian Harker, and a few officers from the case. They stood around a small wooden box, holding Marianne Doyle's ashes, released from the Clark County Coroner's Office after forensic work. Rachel held a note, reading slowly, Marianne Doyle, born February 7, 1975. Missing August 14, 2004. Found February 10, 2023. After 6,772 days, she was finally called by her true name. No one spoke. Desert wind blew, carrying a dry metallic scent, rustling the American flag on its pole. Rachel opened the box, scattering a pinch of ash into a small sand bed beside a flower garden, where a new bronze plaque read, "In memory of Marianne Doyle, found and not forgotten." That evening, Rachel returned home, sitting by her window facing east, where city lights blurred into the horizon. She opened her notebook, its final page blank. She wrote, April 17, 2023, Harlan sentenced to life without parole. Case #0411815 status changed. Missing homicide closed. Justice isn't swift, but its memory outlasts us all. She closed the notebook, turned off the light. In the dark, she felt a breeze from Lake Mead's direction. Long, dry, but no longer cold. Outside, Las Vegas glowed as if night never existed. But in that room, Rachel knew Marianne's night had finally ended. The Marianne Doyle case, Las Vegas, 2004, cold case solved. Arrest shocks community is not just a story of justice served after 19 years, but a profound reminder of truth's persistence in a society often too busy to look back. Marianne was an ordinary housekeeper at the Sahara Hotel, a quiet worker in a city that never sleeps. Her disappearance was initially dismissed as minor, a missing person case with no leads, quickly forgotten among hundreds of others. But the determination of people like Detective Rachel Monroe and technician Megan Ortiz brought it back to life. They sought no glory, only believed new technology and persistence could give the lost a final voice. In today's America, where over 600,000 people are reported missing yearly and thousands of cold cases linger, the Marianne Doyle story calls for faith in justice and science. Advances in forensic genealogy, telecom data recovery, and federal coordination didn't just solve a case, they restored identity to the forgotten. But deeper, the lesson is for each person: never think your story is too small to be heard, or that silence is the end. Like Lake Mead's desert in the final scene, arid, yet holding a person's memory, America is still learning to hear buried voices, with intellect, compassion, and belief that justice, though late, can be found. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover a truth buried for 19 years in Nevada's desert, where justice finally spoke. Subscribe to our channel to not miss the next cold case stories, where every mystery awaits its telling in the light of truth.